the Buffalo Bills traded Stephon Diggs. The biggest news of the day, Stephon Diggs, still a great receiver.
Could argue this is the biggest news of the offseason. Low key.
It's
Really could argue that.
The simple question we're going to be answering is, why did the Bills trade Stephon Diggs? And the second question to that is, how much worse are they now?
Bills Nation, Bills Mafia, definitely my dogs, nonetheless.
You lost a troop, man.
He gained a troop. So it made me upset.
Wow. I know. There was no lose-lose here for this guy.
I was sick.
Listen, I'm a CJ Stroud fan. Love to see the Texans succeed, but I would say I'm a definite Bills fan. Those are my heart and souls for sure. It's my second team. I definitely was surprised. I know Stephon Diggs has had issues with this team in just terms of the media. He's been a little bit of a diva. His brother has chimed in too. So especially like last year, like just specifically talking about last year. Last year was a bit of a roller coaster. You saw the Bills come out, lost a couple games they shouldn't have lost to the Patriots, to Denver. You saw his brother call out Josh Allen. You saw people started to put them against each other, talking about Josh wouldn't be who he was without Stephon Diggs. And then, of course, the OC gets fired, forgot his name, Brady comes in, right? And then you see a change and a shift. You start seeing them implement the run game more, implement Josh Allen in the run game more. You start to see, Shakir wake up, Kincaid wake up. But then you start to see Diggs kind of simmer away from the pack, kind of not be as involved. And then when he is involved, making a couple key drops, specifically the one that comes to mind is the one in the Chiefs game. Big play, had an opportunity to really change the game, take the lead. Josh throws a 60-yard bomb, just goes right through Diggs' hands. He just couldn't make the grab. And just to talk about the end of that year, they went on a 6-0 run, 5-0 run, what it was. Walking to the playoffs, they clutched up.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Diggs wasn't one of the main components of that. He definitely is still a factor when he's on the field, but he wasn't a big problem. He wasn't a big component of that. I believe Shakir was probably their best receiver towards the late stretch. Yeah, so. And then in the offseason, you see this team, unfortunately, they lose to the Chiefs. You come in, the drama is still kind of there. I kind of understand why the Bills went in this direction. I believe they save about $19 million in money, and I do think they took the fact that they took the dead cap for Stephon Diggs is a huge thing. They want to, they want to change their culture. They want to bring in guys that want to be in Buffalo. They want to get younger. Diggs is getting a little bit old on the older side. He's still a great receiver, like you mentioned, but he is getting up there in age. You have to start to build a different roster around Josh Allen, and I do think the Bills made a deal that they needed to make at this time, because I feel like that the time was right. The organization didn't see the same things that Diggs seen, so unfortunately it had to happen. I think, of course, the Texans got better, but I think off face value, the Bills did get a little worse. You lose a top-end receiver in the league. You lose a guy that, that requires double coverage, requires your top corners. So off face value, you losing him, it hurts. Your receiving core is now Samuel, Shakir, Kincaid, Knox, and you're probably going to draft somebody. But I think in the end, down the road, this could look a little better because you probably weren't going to pay him that money next year. He probably wasn't going to stay anyways. And on top of that, you need to get younger. You need to get more speed on the outside. You need to just get a better team around Josh. So I think inevitably this probably looks bad for the Bills at the moment, but I think they can definitely bounce back from this.
So let me ask, because the way that his contract is set up, he would become an unrestricted free agent at the age of 35 and 28, but there was a potential out after 25, correct?
There's a potential out because Stephon Diggs is on a 3-year, $75 million deal. Mm-hmm. After 2024, only $3 million is guaranteed.
Yep.
So for the Texans, there's no risk involved with this. Mm-hmm. The Bills are eating $31 million in dead cap. The most for a receiver in NFL history. But next year in 2025, they'll have cap to play with.
31, if I'm not mistaken?
I'm not sure the exact number, but I know that next year is where the flexibility for them money-wise comes.
So if you're a Bills fan, you shouldn't be overreacting or honestly underreacting. I say that for the idea that Stephon Diggs came in, and whether you like his exit or don't like his exit, what he did for your team is something that I don't know if any other receiver could have gone in and done. And I say that with the idea that Josh Allen, his rise to being, right now as we consider him, a top 2 quarterback in the league, took time. The way that we talk about, is a quarterback going to develop like a Josh Allen, where we understand that that's unrealistic, and I feel like people hold on to quarterbacks for so long, and I feel like one of the biggest names to blame for that is Josh Allen, because in year 3 he finally broke out, and we started having him in MVP conversations, made it to the AFC Championship game. But what was that paired with? The arrival of Stefon Diggs. We saw Josh Allen take his game to the next level, being in the top 3 at the absolute floor, and that was partnered with Stefon Diggs. Now, this past season, we saw Josh Allen really shoulder primarily a majority of the offensive load, whether it was, of course, passing or rushing the football. Did the same thing last year, except you look at Stefon, and Stefon Diggs was amazing 2 seasons ago. But this past season, like my friend Riv mentioned, the stretch where they went on their heater to end the season, where they secured the top spot of the AFC West, the AFC East, he wasn't really one of the main guys. We saw James Cook be more of a significant part of that offense than a Stefon Diggs. And I understand Stefon Diggs still attracts an insane amount of attention, so naturally the gravity goes to him, and your other guys can get open in their spots. But he wasn't one of the main guys, and that was a problem for him. If I'm building a team, it's always we, it's never me. And unfortunately for Stefon Diggs, who I've been on record constantly supporting and thinking that, hey, I think that it's noise, not thinking anything of it. I respect his confidence. I respect his drive to win. It's gotten to the point where even I have to say it's too much me and not enough we. We saw it in Minnesota. We're seeing it again in Buffalo. And I think Buffalo just wanted to go ahead and move on from that because it was becoming too much of a distraction on the outside looking in. Because there's no reason why a member of another team, while he's not playing football, who has obvious impact, Trayvon Diggs, we understand he's one of the more respected corners in the game. We understand that if he speaks, we know who he's talking about. He's talking about his brother. He's talking about Josh Allen, one of the faces of this league. And you just don't need that outside drama. You want to keep the main thing the main thing. And unfortunately, it didn't seem like Diggs could do that in Buffalo. It's unfortunate because this was a dangerous pairing. This is one of the best duos that we've seen in some time. Stefon Diggs obviously deserves all the acknowledgement and the respect of a top 10 wide receiver in this league. But it gets to a point where you kind of lose respect when it's too much me and not enough we. And that's where Diggs has unfortunately fallen.
I think the diva part is only a smaller portion of this deal. You know, you saw that tweet, was it last night or 2 nights ago, where the guy basically tweets out, Josh Allen without Stefon Diggs would still turn into this great of a player. And Stefon Diggs replies to that tweet on his Twitter, not no burner. He's saying, "Are you sure about that?" ? And I think the next day he ends up getting traded. That was kind of a red flag because he had said things in the past that are a little bit questionable. Remember last season, he didn't show up the first day of practice and they didn't really hear anything about it. And then Sean McDermott had to make a statement after and said like, "Oh, we know who he is." But the whole situation was kind of weird. But I think the bigger issue was that down the stretch, like Drew mentioned, he just wasn't involved enough in the offense. And that's what's causing these issues. And you have 2 options, right? The first option is what they did, and it's to keep the same offense coordinator. You keep Joe Brady, because down the stretch, like you said, they were winning games, but they weren't really winning games the same way they were when they had Ken Dorsey. When they were with Ken Dorsey, they were more pass happy. They were taking more shots down the field. The running back percentage or the amount of targets running backs were getting through or went up to like 22% under Joe Brady, and it was, in the teens when they had Dorsey there. So this is the option they went with. We're going to keep Joe Brady, and at this point, it doesn't feel like Joe Brady with Stefon Diggs was really able to work. And you move off Stefon Diggs, and Riv mentioned some of the money. Diggs would have been $27 million on the Bills cap if they just had him on the roster. To trade him, they had to eat an additional $4 million. So now they're spending over $31 million in dead cap money just to trade him. This isn't saving their money in any way. This isn't to make a move down the line because you're going to have to eat all of this money. It's not going to do anything for your salary cap. So I am a bit cautious on this decision because I get it. Stefon Diggs has had his moments throughout his tenure on the Buffalo Bills. But if I have Josh Allen, I'm trying to maximize my ability to win.
Fair enough.
I'm trying to do everything I can to put the best roster out there. And again, he's made a few comments about Josh, or questionable comments about the Bills more specifically in general. But I always felt like him and Josh, generally speaking, had a fine relationship. Like, did they have their moments on their sideline? Sure, but I think you see that from a lot of great players all the time. We've seen it with Brady. We've seen it with Mahomes. So I don't really see that as too big of an issue because now we look at this Bills roster. Your wide receiver 1, they signed Curtis Samuel. I think that's a solid signing, but he's probably a wide receiver 3, 2 at absolute best. Khalil Shakir had some moments. Of course, you drafted Kincaid, and James Cook was used a lot in the passing game. But now at pick 28, 29, you need a guy. You lost Gabe Davis, of course, too, kind of your big body, deep threat receiver. 29 is basically locked in to draft a receiver, but I don't think one's enough. I think you need to sign or at least draft another one on top of that because you really don't have much depth right now. You're looking at one of the worst receiving cores in the league, and to have Josh Allen and to kind of just throw out, with all due respect to those guys, Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir as your wide receiver 1 and 2, when you've seen with Stephon Diggs, you could have one of the most electric offenses. I just don't think this is a Tyreek Hill Chiefs situation where the Chiefs go and trade Tyreek Hill and they still go to the Super Bowl and win it the next season because they had Andy Reid. I don't think Joe Brady and of course Sean McDermott being a defensive-minded head coach, that doesn't feel like the same thing. Maybe they're saying we have Josh, he's damn near just as good as Mahomes, he's 80, 95% of Mahomes, whatever they think, but that extra 5% and having one of the best offensive minds of all time, that's what's able to help you overcome losing Tyreek Hill. Of course, having Travis Kelce helps too, but they really just don't have a reliable guy now on that offense.
This comes down to 3 things. Stephon Diggs was underperforming, he was expensive, and he was a problem. Not only was he a problem to the coaching staff, but he was a problem to the best player on the team, Josh Allen. I don't think the relationship was fine.
You think it was a negative, it was an unhealthy relationship?
I know Josh didn't even know about the deal until after.
I saw that too, but Bean did say that there was a chance he get dealt in the offseason, like when the season ended.
I feel as if where there's smoke and there's fire. There was too many subtle shots thrown at Josh Allen's way, not only from Stephon Diggs, but from people who are close to him to just believe that this was nothing. Maybe he had a problem with an offensive coordinator or not Josh Allen specifically, but him replying to a bunch of posts whenever Josh Allen gets brought up and Stephon kind of trying to take a bulk of the credit for the improvement, that's where I think there's a problem there. That Stephon Diggs really doesn't believe that Josh Allen would have became this quarterback without him. And who knows? We don't know. That's a hypothetical. Stephon Diggs underperformed last year after Week 10. After Week 10, the last 7 regular season games, 315 yards, 1 touchdown. Josh Allen in that stretch, 1,900 yards, 18 total touchdowns. The Bills went 6-1. Only loss was to the Eagles. The Bills were able to go on the best stretch of the season without Stephon Diggs being Stephon Diggs. I think this move is going to dictate either another beginning to the Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott era, or it's going to be the end of it. You don't deal a guy as good as Stephon Diggs with no repercussions. This offense, I do think with Josh Allen could still be one of the better offenses in the league, but there's no doubt that in this draft, Brandon Beane is eyeing wide receiver. And if he doesn't get the pick right, now you're putting Josh Allen in a lot of trouble and you're asking him to take on and shoulder more of a burden than he's already been shouldering trying to carry this offense. But I do think that this now alleviates them from a obvious negative character in the locker room. Stephon Diggs was about me, like you mentioned. He wasn't about the team. Enough about the team. And then you mentioned it as well, Riv, when you talked about the playoff game. Stephon Diggs underperformed in the playoffs. He had a 55-yard catch that he could have made. It went right through his hands.
Josh gave him a fucking dime.
Josh Allen showed up for those moments, and part of the reason why I'm comfortable and I'm confident in the Bills' offense is, one, because they have Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. Number 2, Curtis Samuel's not a number 1 wide receiver to me, but for years now, I think he's been one of the more underrated ones.
He's a good receiver.
And in an actual good situation, I think he can thrive. He had 600 yards in Washington last year. The offense was a mess. The quarterback play wasn't there. Who's to say that with Josh Allen that can't go up 200 yards, or maybe he has his first 1,000-yard receiving season? Khalil Shakir has 600 yards receiving. And then Dalton Kincaid. They drafted him in the first round for a reason, because they think he could be one of the best tight ends in the league. So if those things go right for Buffalo and they draft a receiver that ends up being productive for them, I think we're going to overlook this Stephon Diggs move. But if they come out and they're porous on offense, we're going to look at the Stephon Diggs trade and say Brandon Beane made a gigantic mistake.
I feel like another part of that is if the Texans offense comes out and we're talking about them as the number 1 offense in football, now it's going to be even more so, the Bills made a mistake. But I feel like that's an unfair thing to say, understanding that there's some strong weapons over there in Houston. Understanding that they do have one of the premier young quarterbacks in the National Football League too, in C.J. Stroud. We all understand that. That offense now has Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, Tank Dell, God willing that he's 100% ready to go. And they forget that Joe Mixon also was brought to the squad this offseason as well. There was a lot of firepower on this offense. I'm fully anticipating that the Houston Texans offense is going to be great. But again, their greatness can also make fans go and say, why the hell did we trade Stephon Diggs? But understanding that the bigger picture is we would rather a locker room that's 100% sound in what we're doing and trying to move forward with a mindset of we, not me. And again, Stephon was completely against that, it seems.
That's what it was during their 6-1 stretch. It was about sharing the sugar, being more as a team.
Sharing the sugar, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
I love me some sugar. It was even guys on the defensive end, guys that don't have the big names, just making plays and being a team together. And I think that's what they kind of implemented when Joe Brady got there, just more team foundation, more being together, more we and not me.
Yep.
Same thing with Sean McDermott. I know Josh and Sean have never, from my knowledge, thrown any shots. They've always they put the blame on themselves. Like I mentioned with Diggs, it's a lot of me stuff. Sometimes he does throw these little shots. When Diggs speaks, it's when Trayvon, speaks, it's because Stephon and him have had conversations. It's obvious. Y'all brothers. We all have brothers in here, except Dels.
Don't have a brother now.
Sorry, Dels. Can't be a part of that. But I'm your brother.
Appreciate that.
But I do think the Bills will be fine. I think offensively, it's not going to be like a top 3, top 5 offense in the world. It's not going to be that. But I think it'll be more methodical, more spread out. But you got to look at the division. The Jets got some new pieces. The Dolphins are still hanging around. You still got the Chiefs. Houston got better. It is going to losing Diggs is going to make it a little harder to make the playoffs for sure. And you in the fourth quarter, you are going to need those guys to make those type of plays. But you're still young. You still have Josh Allen. If you still have him, you can make some moves.
It does feel like a new era in Buffalo now. You lose multiple dudes on defense. You lose Poyer. You lose Trey White. On offense, you lose Stephon Diggs. It does feel like a missed opportunity, though, if you're looking back on Buffalo. Von Miller, with all due respect, he's probably not going to play much next season. He's really not good enough at this point of his career. Just injuries have caught up to him. Age has caught up to him.
First ballot Hall of Famer, man.
First ballot, undoubtedly one of the best edge rushers, of like this kind of generation in his prime.
You could just say all time, man.
Of all time, sure. But it does feel like a missed opportunity for Buffalo because, they felt like year in and year out that they should be at least in a Super Bowl. That Josh Allen, we're calling him a top 3 quarterback for the last 2-3 seasons now. And we recognize that Josh Allen is great. We recognize that Stephon Diggs, one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. And you just really go back to that Chiefs game when there's 13 seconds left, and it feels like this was probably their best opportunity at that time to kind of take that next step. Of course, Josh Allen's still young, but you're paying him now, and you see kind of the ramifications of paying Josh Allen this amount of money. You're going to have to move on some of your guys. And I think you guys are painting a good picture in terms of sharing the wealth because they were winning, but we go through it almost every year. You look at the top teams in the NFL, quarterbacks have to be great, of course, but almost all of them have at least one, if not two, reliable top-tier weapons.
I agree with that, but that's when you're not Josh Allen. When you're Josh Allen, you can make up for a lot of deficiencies on an offense. I think this offense will still be top 10 next year.
But we've always talked about the Buffalo Bills needing another wide receiver opposite side of Diggs, and they just lost the guy that we've given them a lot of credit for. How can we
Diggs
not keep that same energy? Fact.
Because I feel like the identity is changing for the team. I think they're running the ball more.
The only team to really win without an ex-wide receiver over however many years, the Chiefs this year. And Rashid took a strong leap towards the second half of last season. Last year, correct. Yeah. Well, Travis Kelce was amazing.
Well, Kelsey's been great these last 2 years, but I'm saying at the receiver position.
I understand what you're saying, but it also
that's
helps
a weapon.
when you
that's
have
a
Kelce.
weapon.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like, Travis Kelce, you put up against any.
But that's why if the outliers like Patrick Mahomes, Brady's done it with, not top tier weapons in the past too. But that's the tier of guys. And
I know the
Josh
outlier
is just as talented.
Is Mahomes, but Josh Allen, he's just one of those quarterbacks that you feel very comfortable with, that you can put just enough.
I agree,
but they'll be fine.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to make it easier for him. At this the end of this offseason, right? We still have the draft. Say they take a receiver. I mean, you can't tell me that you feel more confident about them winning the East than being a wild card team than you did at the beginning of the offseason.
You think keeping Diggs would have made that easier based off the way the season ended last year?
Yeah, I think you could win and Stephon Diggs could play well. They've showed that for multiple seasons.
But clearly the Bills are saying that we'd rather eat $31 million than keep this guy.
I mean, they made it a pretty, and it was a 2025 second as well. Houston has picks in this upcoming draft. There was a 2025 second. I'm not just like taking that and just throwing it away. I would just hope, like if I was Josh Allen, if I was a Bills fan, I want to keep as much talent around him as possible. Even though he can make up for it, I get it. And maybe the receiver you draft at 29 ends up being a stud because he has Josh Allen. But imagine you have Stephon Diggs. Now you draft a receiver at 29 who is a stud. Now this looks like, okay, we got a real chance to make a push again.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's tricky because you want to keep the talent, but you also want to get rid of the headaches, you know. And unfortunately, this was a marriage that was probably going to end. But like it's just hard to defend it because they were winning without Diggs, like not without
him.
They were winning with, but they've also won with him.
But in
that specific stretch, yes, new OC is fair too.
They were, and last year before that OC, they were struggling.
But you're tying yourself to Joe Brady. Listen, Joe Brady for that stretch, they were fine. It was worse, like numbers wise, than it was with Ken Dorsey.
For sure.
And his 2 years with Carolina, to be fair, didn't really have a bunch of quarterback or decent quarterbacks, but it wasn't like anything special there.
I think they only care about the result is the win.
That's fair. I mean, if you're Buffalo, that's how it should be.
I'm looking at the offseason losses by them. Stephon Diggs, Tre'Davious White, Gabe Davis, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Leonard Floyd, Mitch Morse, Tyrell Dodson. How many of these really matter?
I mean, it's a lot of starters they're missing.
Both safeties. That's tough.
Micah
Trey White's
Hyde,
been years,
I think, is going to retire. I think because he has a problem with his neck.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's been a lingering thing. Mm-hmm.
So he might retire. But so they might have just lost him. Anyway.
I mean, if we're looking at this past season, I think a lot of these guys, you can make the argument they didn't contribute as much in previous years.
Trey White has been hurt the last 2 seasons. Yep. Mitch Morse he's average. He was the worst offensive lineman in that group. I think they've developed that offensive line pretty well. Huh?
I don't think that's the end of the world losing Mitch Morse.
No,
the offensive line was really great.
Well, yeah, this is probably Josh's best offensive line.
Rotational pass rusher. He's going to be missed, but you can replicate that. Yeah. Tyrell Dodson, as long as you have Matt Milano healthy, you're good there. They still have a lot of talent. I think the secondary got younger with Rasul, Benford, and Teron Johnson. Teron's an all-pro.
I think the corners are fine.
His position, this is still a really good team. Yeah. The defense is still going to be really good. It's just about trying to get Josh Allen, a receiver, in the draft.
Which they will.
And I feel as if, because even when they had Stephon Diggs, before Dalton Kincaid, there really wasn't a consistent separator on the Bills. Mm-hmm. Gabe Davis is not a separator. He's just a deep threat.
They got Cole Beasley. He was kind of decent.
Yeah, for like a year, though, then he fell off. But now it's like Samuel can separate. Shakir can separate. Kincaid can separate. Sure. They have guys who can win one-on-one matchups. And
James Cook.
They aren't so reliant on Stephon just being the guy to always win. Mm. There's a lot of good players in this offense, and that's why I think they could surprise some people. I really like Curtis Samuel. Like my image of him is much higher than probably a lot of people's perception is. I like Curtis Samuel.
He's locked in.
I like Curtis Samuel.
1,000 yards?
I really do like Curtis Samuel. He can get to it. All I'm going to say is that I think he can get to it.
Let me ask, do they go the bigger type wide receiver in this with the, what I believe, pick 20, is it 27?
I would go Ladd McConkey.
Okay, Keon Coleman just for the size.
Keon Coleman is
I feel
Gabe
like
Davis.
I've seen a lot of mocks of Keon to the Bills.
We took him an hour mock.
Correct. That's
Keon Coleman is just a lot of red flags. He's the prototypical. He's the prototypical jump ball contested catch receiver.
Correct.
I don't know if I like that. The players I'm looking for, Adonai Mitchell, I think would be awesome.
If he's there, that would be a really good pick.
I'm a big Xavier guy.
Trading up maybe to go get Brian Thomas.